we got a question from John, who is a purple belt and running into something that all of us have experienced or will experience at some point if you train long enough, which he's running into a jiu-jitsu plateau. He's running into a skill plateau. He's not getting any better. And in some cases, he feels like other people around him are improving faster than him, and he's struggling. And he says that the way that he's tried to remedy this issue is simply to train more, to go after it more, to more hard rolls, to just push himself even more than what he's already doing. And it's still not working. And he's wondering if I have any sort of ideas on how to get over this, and if I have personally had jiu-jitsu plateaus or skill plateaus along the way in grappling. So, John, thanks for the question, brother. And I've been around for a long time, bro. I've been around doing jiu-jitsu since 2003. I wrestled it back in 2000. So, of course, I've had some plateaus along the way. But I have some ideas that I think might help you get over this. So a lot of times when you run into a jiu-jitsu plateau or a skill plateau, it's very similar to what you do with your weight training. So if you're training weights, a lot of times, every so often, you will start to mix up your exercises, the rep range, the rep schemes, the different things, the parameters that you use for those particular types of lifts. You'll mix everything up because what it does is it stimulates the muscle growth, right? Well, you got to do the same thing because a lot of times what happens with your jiu-jitsu is you do the same things over and over and over again. And so you're not getting any better because you're just doing the same stuff. And so sometimes you got to mix things up every now and then. Now, again, I can't give you a particular exact time frame because everybody wants to know, well, how long should I use a particular technique and when should I play around? That's going to be really tough. But when you start to run into a situation where you feel like nothing's working or everybody's stopping what you're doing or you're just not getting any better, it's probably a good indicator that you got to start mixing some stuff up. Now, there's a really cool book I want to share with you that might give you some ideas. I just finished reading it. It's called Peak. It was actually given to me from a friend. And it gets into the ideas of deliberate practice. I've talked about that before on the channel. By the way, I'll put a link down below for you if you want to get it. But I've talked about the ideas of deliberate practice numerous times on the channel. And some of those guys did some of the studies that the 10,000 hour rule is based off of. In case you're not familiar with that idea of the 10,000 hour rule, basically it's essentially this number that they sort of said that, high achievers and different things get to 10,000 hours. And once you get to 10,000 hours, it's kind of, you're magically gifted this skill of being a master, right? But the thing that they talk about in the book with that is that if you want to get really good at something, you simply can't just do more of it. It's not just the case, right? So when they were looking at these guys that were running these studies, right, back in the day, when they were looking at the people that were putting in all this practice and all this work and the people that rose to super high levels of their sport or their particular thing, what they found was they placed a huge emphasis on deliberate practice. Now, you can think of this in jiu-jitsu terms, right? Deliberate being focused on something specific like situational rolling or maybe limiting yourself with particular types of movements versus just a full roll, right? And you can compare this to other things like, for instance, in music. A particular musician could play a certain part of the song that's very difficult to them versus maybe just playing the whole song through because it's fun, right? Or when they talked about people that were struggling with golf, right? Golfers. The golfer would focus on a particular type of situation that they were struggling with to improve versus just playing around a golf. And so you can get the idea. Basically, it's very focused versus just playing the whole thing through. And playing the whole thing through, just like in jiu-jitsu, full rolling is fun. That's usually the fun part. When you just put it all together and you're just kind of letting it all go versus when you're just kind of doing something that's very repetitive, it can be very, very boring. But that's a lot of times where we get better. And that was the thing that they found with all these different high achievers is that the people that were the most skilled put the most deliberate practice in, and they were the most focused when they were training and whatever they were doing. And so what you've got to do is you've got to bring some of that over to your jiu-jitsu. And I can attest to that being very important because a lot of times my biggest skill jumps in jiu-jitsu have come from me backing off from the hard rolling for a little bit. Again, hard rolling will always have its place, and I freaking love rolling hard, but backing off from it a little bit and you're still rolling hard, but you're being very focused. I guess the sort of the split to make is not hard full rolling, but like hard situational rolling. We'll say it like that. But basically really focus on a particular area of the game, whether you're doing this during a full roll situation or if you're doing it with a situational rolling. So I'll give you two examples of how I've done this, and hopefully this will be useful to you. So with one situation, I learned some half guard sweeps. as a purple belt, loved them. One of my coaches, Hanato Tavares, showed them to me. I loved them. They were really useful to me. They fit right into my game instantly. I stuck with those sweeps for like 2 months straight. Every time I rolled during a full roll, I would always go back to my half guard and try to use them. When I was going to open mats, I would want to do situational rolling from my half guard. When people would like let me, I would try to teach half guard to them to show them how to do it. I was obsessed with the position. I showed it to everybody and I did as much as I could with it. And in turn, I got really good at sweeping, which before then, I just never really had developed a really strong sweeping game. And then there were other times where, for instance, I struggled with getting out of side control. And there was a period where one of my friends who was a black belt, at the time I was a brown belt, I had a good back mount. He had bad mount, but I don't want to say bad, but he had underdeveloped back mount escapes. I had underdeveloped side control escapes. He had a good side control. So we would just go to the open mat and he would load up in side control. I would try to escape. If I escaped, we would reset and do it again. And then we would flip it around and do it on back mount for him to improve his game. And both of us improved a ton from those positions, just spending time in those positions and doing that. And a lot of times I notice my students when in my classes, any class that I do, I almost always make them do some situational rolling from the techniques and positions that we worked on in class, right? And I notice when we do this, because we'll typically stick to a position for 2 to 3 weeks, I notice by the end of that period that all of a sudden I'll start to see them when we move on to a new like area, whenever we do the full rolls, because full rolling's fun. And so we always include some of those in. It's kind of like the dessert of training. When we do our full rolls, I'll start to notice that after this 3 weeks or these 2 weeks of sticking to this one position and do a lot of situational rolling and a lot of repetitions and drilling, all of a sudden these guys are doing these techniques during their full rolls. So again, you may not have control of your training situation, which I imagine you don't, but again, you can go to open mats and you can focus on a particular thing. And if you can't even do that when you're rolling in your gym, you can always simply, focus on being really zeroed in on a particular part of your game that you want to improve. And again, if you don't know what to improve, just pick something. Just pick something different. Just pick something different and see where it goes. Again, this is part of the fun of jiu-jitsu, is just exploring, because you don't sometimes know what's going to be your technique until you try it. But yeah, that's what I would say. Lay off the hard rolling a little bit. You don't need to go harder. You probably just need to be a little bit more focused with your training, and that'll probably help you get it out of this plateau